Thank you. Please give a big hand to Ranga. Ranga, you beautifully articulated in terms of synchronizing with nature, blending with nature. I think that's a fantastic point. And you also beautifully articulated in the sense that the smartness starts with the people. I think we should change the mindset to be changed. I think that's a very, very important point that needs to be developed. Now let me go back to our friend from the government. Sir, how do you feel in terms of affordable housing? Where does it stand? What are the key issues? How these affordable housing concepts blend with the smart city concept? What is the critical issues involved in that? Please let me have your thoughts and views on that.
It's quite a logical question, and we underwent this question in the ministry also, because as you know, when the discourse on a smart city started, and many of my colleagues also will agree, and the immediate idea was that we'll look at big buildings, IT, very high standard of infrastructure, they are all okay. Then ultimately when we started listing at what are the core infrastructure, you will find that affordable housing also came in that. Because I fully agree with Mr. Rangnath also, who also highlighted about the planning. Ultimately what will happen if you don't plan for affordable housing in the smart city, and you only look at very rich buildings or big buildings, multi-storied with all modern facilities, ultimately the city has to sustain itself with the help of people who will also work there. So if you don't plan a smart affordable housing part in the smart city concept, then ultimately what will happen? It will lead to unplanned growth once again. People will start occupying land, encroachments will start taking place, and ultimately after maybe a couple of years, that smart city which we thought is a smart city won't remain a smart city. So that was the idea with which right in the beginning this has been highlighted, and this is being given a lot of importance in the smart city overall plan of action. Now I will also like to tell you, see the smart city program or the mission will draw upon various other missions of the government for meeting its infrastructure requirement. Because you will not say, okay, these are the 100 smart cities and everything will be separately given to these smart cities. Ultimately, where are the resources? That's another question which is said, that how government feels. Ultimately, the resources in terms of capital as well as land, they are perhaps the most constraining resources which we will have to tackle. And that's where if you look at the affordable housing component of a smart city, ultimately would be funded by the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana or the Housing for All. Some of the infrastructure within a smart city may get money from the Amrut program. So this is something to be kept in mind, because the other schemes, maybe if it is based upon the bank of river Ganga, then maybe Namami Gange may give some inputs or some sort of assistance by way of environmental improvement or the riverfront improvement from that program. So you will have to have a kind of synergy of various things. Coming back to affordable housing, our major challenge at this point of time looks in terms of getting the resources. Because as Brotim also said, we require a huge amount of money, and that's where a lot of private players have to fit in. Land is another big constraint, and apart from these land and capital, the ease of doing business or the building permission seems to be another major area of concern, because unless we sort it out, you will not get good private participation also. So we are quite alive to that, and many things we are doing. Maybe if some other question is there, I will like to discuss about you. Maybe certainly someone will be interested in knowing that what exactly we are looking at that thing.
Thank you, Mr. Ajay. Thanks for one wonderful clarification made. It is not that the smart city project is confined in terms of money. It can draw the resources from other schemes of the government. I think that's a fantastic take and knowledgeable input for all of us. Thank you for that point. Now let me again focus on affordable housing. Mr. Brotin Banerjee is there, who is a leader in terms of affordable housing also, and he has done it not only in affordable housing, it's a green affordable home also. So that has been a wonderful feather in his cap. Brotin, what is your key challenge in terms of an affordable home? What is the real big issue in the affordable homes, and how do we plan to solve those?
Yeah, thank you. If I put it into three baskets, I'll put it in the government basket, what I feel the government can do, and I think certainly what Mr. Mishra is saying. The government has, this government in a very short period of time has probably put a lot more than what has happened in the last few years. If I look at from the government point of view, I think what can really give a boost to affordable housing is first an industry status to affordable housing. We must understand that affordable housing is an integral infrastructure play. Margins are low, capital investment is huge, technology is huge, scalability is huge. We need to get in infrastructure status for affordable housing. That's number one. What will that do? What that will do is that it will allow you to source funds at or slightly lower rates of interest, and you can then scale up, private participation and scale up. That's one. Second, what Mr. Mishra ji was rightly saying, a clean governance criteria for getting approvals. That's the second part. Third, and very importantly, what's to be done to ensure that the people who are living on the margins and who come in search of work, how can the government put money in their hands, not only by way of employment, but also by giving them loan or so that they can get access to funds to buy an affordable housing. See, the government, it is impossible to believe, even with all our thing, even if we stretch our intellect, the government of India or many other governments to house India's population, it will be an impossibility. Private participation is a requirement, it is a must. So what can we do to ensure that money and employment generation as well as banks to loan? Today even very credible banks, even nationalized banks don't give money to the informal sector. Do we know that? We don't. So if he was to get a loan, he would get, for his fifth house, he will get a subsidized loan. But if his driver was to get a loan, it would be very difficult for him to get. And that's his first house at 50 years of age, he would not be. That's the stupidity of our system. So that's from a point of view of what I think the government has to do. The second, from a consumer perspective, as I was saying, to get the money in his own hand, those are the things which he has to do. We have to look at the informal sector, how the people who are earning, who are shopkeepers, marginal businessmen, people who are working in the service industry, what can be done to facilitate them so that they can buy a house. And there are governments, there are schemes in Mexico and other where there is against the government puts money into the hands so that they can buy. And with that becoming the first collateral, the virtuous cycle starts with him. His children can then go and study, you can get a housing loan, you can get a loan to start work. So I am talking from a consumer basket, that's the consumer part that can be done. Third, what can private participation and people like us can do? So one, I did say that about the industry status. Second, we must come out looking at the cyclicity of the real estate business. I think affordable housing business is a recession-proof business because there's so much of requirement. If credible organization can come today, there's a huge trust deficit with developers. Why? Because they promise the moon and they don't deliver houses even after 10 years or 15 years. They run away with the money. So with the RERA Act, which his ministry is also formulating, I think there's going to be a thing. And with large organization coming in, and with even if projects are delayed, they are delivered at time, I think that will come in and that will boost confidence in the sector. PPP projects are a must. So working with the government having trust with the developers and doing projects together, maybe on a joint venture. Why can't the government become a joint venture partner with the private sector in making affordable housing? Which, fundamental of governments is being lost. I don't think anything is being lost. In the government will be a stakeholder and can get it. A single window clearance so that approvals are done quicker. Those are things which I think can help a lot. Having said all of this, what is the responsibility for large organization is sustainability. So we must look at how to upgrade the ecosystem. Mr. Mishra ji was rightly saying, we can make 18 million houses. Who will build it? Today with 1.2 billion population, there's still a huge deficit of 30 to 40% of workers and skilled workers in this sector. How do we bridge that deficit? That is one is through technology. How we can get in different technologies so that we can reduce our dependence on skilled and unskilled workers. The second on how we can scale up and skill India so that our unemployed youth can have a better job tomorrow and upskill them so that they can be thing. So this is a it's a very good program for doing housing for all. It's a virtuous cycle. It will also get a great boost to the GDP. And I think that's something which we all should be well aware of.
Thank you, Mr. Banerjee. One important point that many of the developers have frequently asked in the context of affordable housing. The significant cost of the property is attached to land. I mean the land as a percentage of overall cost is very significant in terms of affordable housing. Many of the developers have said that why don't that land be leased out by the government See, the problem with the affordable housing, and Mr. Mishra ji also agree, many of them affordable houses are far away, nobody wants to occupy, many of them are unoccupied. There is some challenges are there. How to have the affordable housing within the city, and many of the land is under the control of the government. So what we are trying to say is, okay, why don't the government give it a lease of 99 years so that this cost is not passed on to the, this cost should not be taken advantage by the developer, at the same time it should be passed on by the developer to the consumer. So that the affordable housing is only truly the construction cost plus the margin whatever the developer wants to take. So what is your take on that? What is your thought? Do you agree with this point?
Yes,
Disagree?
I have, and very rightly said, as migration of people from smaller cities and villages happen to the city, it's less likely that everybody will come into the city and in the first year or so be able to afford his own house. So we have to think of different programs, and the government also has to think of different programs whereby you can incentivize a thing called rental housing. See, this is something which is very important. Many other developed cities in the world have a concept of rental housing. So the first few years where a person comes into the city, he may not be able to afford his own house, but he can stay in a rental house for a period of time till he earns enough, gets a better job, moves up in life, and is able to own his own house. Your question of having affordable housing in the city, there's a huge, there's so much of demand that you have to do multiple ways in which you have to address this problem. So you have to look at giving subsidized housing for people within the city, because there's a large number of them who work within the cities and transportation will become an issue. So one is through lease house. The second is through the scheme whether you are going to give 20% or 30% reservation for social housing within plots of land in order for you to house people from a less income, less earning income households. So that is the third. And the third, world over, town centers will house at best mid to upper income households. It is the farther reaches. So infrastructure development and high-speed infrastructure, railway links and other transportation networks are required to make the city diverse and the city thing. Because even industries will move out of the town center. They will go out of the city. So when you do townships and other things, the workers and other people who work will work outside. So it has to, it has to be dispersed to some extent.
Thank you, Bhutins. Mishra ji, what is your thought on this concept of leasing? Does it sound interesting to you, or what is your thought, and what is other alternate can be?
I think I will take this. Leasing can be one of the option, and I agree with Bhutins, because there has to be a large number of options and alternatives to be tried out. As I told you right in the beginning, that land is one of the major constant apart from the capital and money and skill and other things, because land is very limited. See, if you look at the housing for all, one of the first pillar is slum redevelopment using land as resource. So at one point of time we used to think of shifting the slum to some other place. Instead, the latest thing is that we want to rehabilitate them, redevelop them there itself. So that is one option. Of course, there will be limitation. There will be certain places where the slums are there, then the whole thing is objectionable or even unsafe. So you may have to shift them, but that's the last resort. That's not the first choice. So that's one option where you have to look at some models and then what can happen. If you look at our guidelines, we have also requested state governments to unlock some of the land which is there with public institutions. Not only with the state government, Government of India institutions, public sector also. So that's also being attempted, though it's going to take time. Let's not be very impractical that anyone will simply part with the land which is under control of that ministry or department. But that is also being talked, and that's also being taken up a higher level. So that will also free some of the land. We have also, if you look at the Housing for All guideline, in some of the mandatory conditions, we have also requested states to give some relaxed land use requirement, like increased FARI and all that. But what happens the moment you do it, if the density increases, infrastructure has to match that. Otherwise, it will lead to some other kind of problem. So that's where the planning is very important. There are many cities where land is still available, but if you don't do anything, it will not remain available after 5 years. So we have also requested the state governments to, as one of the mandatory conditions, that in your master plan, earmark some land as affordable housing zone. So that, you may not be able to, that may not be a big city now, and you have some land, why don't you earmark it right in the beginning, so that maybe after 5 years, 3 years, 4 years, something can be done and planned, and then it can be utilized. So I think there are different ways of looking at finding this solution, and no one thing will be able to find. This is such a complex thing, we will have to look at multiplicity of the solutions.
Yeah, I think the smart city needs a lot of complex solutions. Very good, sir. Thank you. Thanks for highlighting the point. Now let me go back to ICT friends. Manoj, one of the point I covered was that ultimately the smart city has to be a reality. The individual items should have a business case. It should have a benefit and somebody must be willing to pay for it, and obviously then it will attract investment. Do you have a lot of examples like that? Can, suppose imagine a city which has been converted, you have 98 list of cities. Do you have a list of projects that can be done, or is a pipeline of projects are possible? Can it be developed on those lines? So what is your thought process on that? Let me have your views.
I will give strict ICT views, so we'll stick to my brief. Two examples come to my mind, sir. First one is something which is practiced almost all over Europe and in the US, so it may be sounding a bit battered. But let's say the trains, the tube, metro or surface trains are run in various parts of Scandinavia by company A. It is the rails are leased to them by company B. It can be government also. However, the ticketing of not only train but trams, buses, even ships, in various parts of Scandinavia, the ticketing is run by a complete third company C. Yes, so there itself you can find there is a business model that starts making sense, suddenly. Is that there is this company who is looking at the infrastructure that is being provided and somebody is going to run traffic on it. That traffic will carry people, that people will require some kind of enablement of ICT in terms of a ticket which can be used anywhere. In fact, there are some tickets that you get out there in Scandinavia where you can use in museums and libraries also. Yes, so it is kind of one thing fits for all. However, it is done by some third company C. So there will always be, kind of scope for innovation by using some bit of technological intervention to start things like this, where if there is a right for use given by government or some bigger corporation, the billing and the utility on top of it can be done by somebody else, and therefore have maybe sustainability or even take away some bit of cost, whereby the infrastructure company focuses on infrastructure and all these things are left with some other company. That's one example. The one that I'm tempted to give, but I have to admit that I'll be inventing it a little from the problem that I just heard, which seems to be pretty grave, in the sense there can be affordable housing provided either in PPP oriented states or any other form of business, let's say. But we do not have a mechanism as a country today saying that I know what is the credit risk associated with that person. Because we take kapda, makan and broadband. Your makan thing we have discussed quite a lot. But a lot of roti and kapda is now being vended on electronic sites. If you get hold of that data in an anonymous fashion or in a fashion which can be attributable, saying that this person X, without naming Manoj Davne, has ordered 16 things on Flipkart, and out of that he used cash on delivery for 14 and he swiped his credit card for 2. Let's say the data is there in the system. Can this kind of surrogate data be utilized? And I'm then extending it to property tax payments, I'm extending it to water tax payments. Are there mechanisms by which we can formulate in a very data analytics kind of way, saying that I can now potentially have a view on a credit risk rating of a person, which is not alien, many other countries do it, and therefore facilitate the loan eventually, which will lead him to a, kind of a affordable housing scenario. It's just 2 or 3, quick things that I could think about. And I'm sure government will be in a very good position to facilitate things like this.
Thank you, Manoj. Now let me turn my attention to Mr. Ranganath. Mr. Ranganath, then we have quite discussed about various infrastructure, especially water infrastructure, power infrastructure, requires huge capital investment. How do we attract capital investment so that it becomes a part of the smart city project? What are the options available? What do you think, how do you make it financially viable? Such projects should be financially viable so that it can be scaled up. So what are your thoughts on that?
There are basic issues here in this kind of a situation. First of all, the tradition has been very poor risk sharing with the government. Wherever the government is doing these things directly, there is no issue. But wherever they are trying to attract private parties or on the PPP mode, then all the risks are dumped on the private party, and that makes projects non-bankable or non-viable. The other issue is availability of long-term infrastructure funds, which are at lower cost, which is what most countries do have. Unfortunately, we don't. So these are some structural changes that we have to bring about if we have to really attract people to come into this area, especially water. See what's happened to the power area. I think most of the IPPs are almost going bankrupt. The other structural issue is that consistency of policies. When we look at infrastructure, we still look at a 5-year plan because governments get re-voted after every 5 years. But infrastructure has to be looked at 25, 30-year plans. You cannot have a 5-year plan. By the time you plan, it takes 5 years to put up a power station or maybe 3 years to put up a water station. And by the time somebody else has come and the policies have changed. The other issue that is facing is the fact that you don't get payments. The ideal situation for a country like India, given our socio-economic structure, is to have the government own some of the assets in water, etc., and have private parties running it efficiently. So it's a real PPP.
Yeah.
But unless there is a way of having equitable risk sharing and a very clear policies which are consistent, you'll always face this problem. And then we can, of course, come to the, once this is done, we can come to the area of getting low-cost, long-term infrastructure funds.
Thank you, Ranga. I think you emphasized 3 points very beautifully. One is the element of risk sharing between the government and the private sector. Second thing is the consistency in the policy and looking in terms of a long-term aspect. Thank you very much. Friends, I think now we are ready for opening up the questions. And only one small ground rule. Please confine to questions. And no suggestions as far as possible. Suggestions, you are most welcome in a piece of paper. You can give it to CI. Second thing is the time is mentioned as 30 seconds. If it is more than 30 seconds, it will be taken as a speech. And the only panelists are supposed to speak. So please kindly bear with me on this point. The mics are ready. My friends with the mic. Yeah, I think 2 questions are ready. But I'm sorry we're not able to see very clearly because the light is so glaring. And the sun is against us. Yeah, I think first we will always give a, yeah, please give the mic to the gentleman on the right side. Yeah, our international guest is the most important for us. Please, yeah, most welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. My name's Nick Hanley. I'm from the European Union, but I'm sitting here as a UK town planner. And as I've listened to the panel, I'd like to throw 2 statements at them to see if they agree. I was a bit perturbed to hear that the idea of a smart city was one where we could tell people to get out when it's going to be flooded. In my geography lessons we learnt about floodplains, and as a planner I thought smart city was one which wasn't built in a floodplain in the first place. Is that the practice in India? Second question, we're moving away from zoning cities like we did in the 1920s. Surely a smart city is a city which is planned with mixity and density, giving people the chance for the accessibility they need to schools, housing, jobs by proximity rather than mobility.
Yeah, so anybody would like to answer that? Please.
Yeah, since I did mention the flood. Maybe there is a demarcation, at least in our mind, so that when you are building out a city, starting with a plan and therefore constructing these 100 kind of smart cities, which can be greenfield, I'm sure the town planner will ensure that it is not on a floodplain. But for brown cities, for brownfield as we call it, where civilization has developed in and around certain blocks of either trade, commerce, community or even rivers, if we are going to try and bring them into the ambit of being a little bit more smarter, given that they have a geographical location, potentially it could be seen as a mitigatory factor than anything by allowing something like this as an early warning signal to be given. That's would be my only impromptu answer to that, sir.
So let me try to answer your second question, sir. I think all the new cities which are coming up in the area of say 100-acre development, 500 acres development, have all this mixed development as a fundamental concept. You have office areas and residential areas adjacent to each other. Second, it will also have all the recreation, hospital requirement, school requirement, and the other forms of open space, everything packaged together. So that concept is getting built into India. And right now we have about nearly, the green city projects alone goes for about 40 to 41 projects. all ranging from anywhere between 100 acres to 2,000 acres, all following this concept. I think this concept is very much under implementation. I think what you mentioned is a very, very valid point. Thanks for the suggestion.
I have
Yeah.
from alternative.
No, yeah, please, sir, I think I have already given an option to the other gentleman. I will come to you third, sir. Yeah.
I am R. Mehrotra from Delhi Technological University. I have a question to the whole panel. Have we given a thought about the materials where we are going to procure them from and the cost of the materials? If you see, the cost of even sand is more than 60 rupees in wholesale, more than 60 rupees per cubic feet.
Yeah. Point understood, sir. Point understood.
Other, I mean, if you try to see over the years, due to probably the policies of the government or whatsoever, I don't want to comment upon, the price of the cement is more stable compared to the price of other materials. पहले टाइम में लोग बोलते थे मिट्टी सैंड मिला दिया कंस्ट्रक्शन में, एक्स्ट्रा सैंड मिला दिया, अभी सैंड मिलाना भी महंगा पड़ेगा.
So only one clarification, sir. You did not introduce yourself. I presume you are not from cement industry.
No, I am not from cement industry. I am from the academics. Okay. And I am just telling this because the scale at which the construction will be there in this thing. Have we made an arrangement? So how we are going to get so much material?
Fine, sir. Thank you. Thank you. We understood the point.
So, no, I just wanted to respond.
How costly the building materials are.
It is very expensive, and
cement and steel are cheap.
Yeah.
I mean, this is my feeling that cement and steel are cheap, so we should have more portion of the cement and steel in the construction rather
thank you,
than
sir.
the
Thank
other
you.
materials.
We have understood the question. We have, sir, we have request for
So,
30 seconds. Yeah.
Your question is very valid and very right. The cost of construction has spiraled really, and it will continue to spiral as demand goes up. One of the most important things, and maybe the panel, if it had more time, it would have discussed, is sustainability and eco-friendly designing and architecture. So today, with IGBC, Griha, and other such rating systems, many leading developers are doing buildings which require lesser material and are far more efficient and higher performance buildings. As a result of which, raw materials will come down. Technology will help in reducing wastages to a very large extent compared to the earlier days, or at least the last 40-50 years. I think even better designing, whether through 3D BIM or 5D BIM, you can also then reduce wastages. That being said, the other thing is that where natural resources like sand, river sand, other things will get banned. Today in parts of Gurgaon, extraction of natural water or groundwater has been, rightly so, has been banned because water table has eroded. So this is one of the bigger things which we have to look at, and we have to, I can only think of one thing which can really help out in frugality in designing so that we can design very efficiently, and secondly, in using technology so that wastage can be minimized. Having said that, construction cost will go up. We have to look at ways in which we can keep it down.
See, the smart city is also diversity. Diversity means gender diversity also. So next priority goes to a lady. Please request her to. Please, the mic should come. Gentlemen, I'll come back to you, sir. I'll come back. I have noted. I'll come back. Yeah.
Thank you, sir, giving me that equality. I'm Sanchita Jindal, Director from Ministry of Environment and Forest. In fact, I had few suggestions, but now I have converted them into the questions.
You're very smart.
Because you said that there are no suggestions. The question is, first, is there any emphasis on building? Means I had been listening to so much about the construction and all those, that how the lower housing and all those. But is there any emphasis on the smart city for developing the infrastructures for waste management, using recycled material? Now we have so much C&D, the construction and demolition waste, and the recycled products are also available. So is there any emphasis on that? And thirdly, we are trying to get into too much into the technology mode and automation mode, but have we tried, have we thought of from the, because this is the life cycle analysis which we need to do, that how much e-waste we will be generating and how we will be tackling all those waste which we will be, which will be generated from these smart cities. Thank you very much. That was my.
Yeah, so okay, let me, I think anybody would like to answer? Yeah. So let me try to answer this point. I think of course we have the panelists, smart city is a very, very vast subject, madam, so we could not cover everything, but your points are well taken. Waste management becomes an integral part of a smart city. It has to be. Otherwise, one of the major mention was made in terms of, another sense was also mentioned in terms of smell. I think to control that, I think this is fundamental requirement. Many of the cities we are trying to integrate with biggest user like cement industry, where the waste can be processed and given to them and they can be used as a fuel. In fact, if you take Japan, the cement industries incidentally make cement. Much of the profit is made by using the waste as a fuel. So that's the type of thing that is happening there, and India is also heading towards that direction. The third point you mentioned about, another interesting point is it's not only waste in terms of this thing. Every city should have a small recyclers around the city. Every smart city, every city should have a set of recyclers. In fact, one man's waste will become another man's raw material, and it becomes another man's raw material like that. So for example, tire waste, material waste, whatever you call it, the waste which cannot be processed, which cannot be directly used, there is a way of doing it. So that's how, when we, in fact, CII is not because of a smart city project, we are trying to have a set of recyclers, every city, and this can blend totally with the smart city. Yeah. Manoj? Yeah.
Just on the LCA point, it's fantastic that you bring it out, ma'am. Thanks a lot for that. Our experience across the world has been, unless an intervention which is deemed to be a smart city or even a normal project by a government or a PPP, is that unless the LCA is determined, that project doesn't get flagged off itself. And why I took the transport example is that has the highest LCA benefit that is currently known at least. And the ratio can be as big as 1:45, which means, $1 of spend can have an impact of not 45%, but there is, in a scale of 1:45, it can actually contribute towards reduction of carbon dioxide. A similar calculation is available for if you are making your workplace smarter by using teleconference or stuff like that. A similar calculation is available for the utility management example that I gave you, saying that if we are going to expend X amount of dollars to try and make this ICT intervention happen, and it will generate e-waste, then what is the benefit on carbon dioxide side? The moment you look at this equation in a very pragmatic way, and if it says that the left-hand side is actually positive and it will save carbon dioxide, the project is green lighted. I think it's a normal process followed at many places. I'm sure we have it in our framework.
Yeah. The gentleman, the last please. Yeah, please. Yeah, you are holding on the mic for quite some time, please.
I am Katpalia from Alternative Futures. We have talked of technically skilled people and also professional people for improving the efficiency of work and services. At the same time, unless we provide education and health of an upgraded area and better efficiency, we may not be able to attract such good people for the smart city which you are proposing. Nobody talks of education.
Yeah, I fully agree with you, sir. We fully agree with you on that point. Only one last question we'll take, please. Yeah.
Can I take it?
Yes, sir, please, sir.
I'm Dr. Gupta. There is a question to Mr. Mishra. Actually, Rent Control Act is very primitive, and to get a house vacated is not easy. So how do you propose to handle that in a smart city? My own house is the last 30 years still fighting in High Court. I don't know how long more year it will take.
See, if we are seized of this problem, we have actually come up, this plus there was also a mention about rental housing. So we have actually come up with a Model Tenancy Act, because the Rent Control Act, there are certain issues in that, and there are issues of repossession and those things. So we have suggested some sort of Model Tenancy Act to the states. Ultimately, states will have to take a call about these reforms. But you will be happy to know that this is also one of the conditions in the Housing for All mission, that states will have to look at the tenancy laws and then modernize or reform so that these kind of issues do not come up. 15 states have already looked into it, and they have come up with some sort of timeline. Within a year or 2 years or 3 years, they will be looking into this and then coming up with some suggestion. And this, along with the rental housing policy plus some of the things which were discussed by my other colleague panelists, will be able to help us to a great extent.
Yes, sir. So the gentleman is standing for quite some time. Yeah, please. Yeah, please have the mic to him.
Good afternoon. All the questions which were posed with regard to the infrastructure development. My question is with regard to the environmental stability. As in this year on 13th of August, we experienced Earth Overshoot Day, which means that the reservoirs of energy which were meant for whole of the year were used 4.5 months before the expected time. So while speeding up the things right now, aren't we going slow down the lane in the future? So how to, it's just like burning our own fuel to speed up the things. So how to maintain a perfect resonance between the infrastructure development and environmental stability so that we can resonate the whole things together in a more efficient way?
I think Mr. Ranga is the correct person to answer that. He is the person who spoke about synchronizing with nature. I think I hand over the mic to right person.
Well, in life, have you ever seen everything being in perfect synchronicity? It never. So you always need to sort of get back to your line of sight, which means you will be meandering up and down. There's never a steady state. But as long as you go towards a steady state, which is a long-term thing, it should be all right. I agree, at times we burn, at times, but you know, when you define nature, it defies you, and we learn the hard way. So I would like to have people learn, I'm thinking a little ahead, which is the ideal state that we would like to be in. But I have to admit here, as a set of people, we sometimes act only when our back is against the wall. We don't seem to be proactive about it, and I do hope the mindset change that I spoke about does come, you know, in every section of society, not necessarily only in India, but around too. And having said that, guys like you should start, you and me, to talk to people and say, okay, can we make those changes? There are people sitting out here, they are coming here to listen to it because they think there is something about it. What about all those people who have not landed up here? If we can't start changing their mindset, I guess it would be. But you will never get equal balance. I often tell, when people ask me about my work-life balance, my wife has all the life and I have all the work, so it's perfectly balanced.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ranga. I never thought about this balance. Yeah. Friends, I think India is overexposed with cricket. So so many of us easily will understand the terminologies I am trying to use now. So this is a slog over, the last over. So each one of you will be given only 3 bulleted answers. You have to give 3 bulleted answers, nothing more than that. So the question is, for the smart cities to happen, what are your 3 top suggestions? Only in bullet points, please. First, let's start with Mr. Banerjee. For the smart cities to become a reality, what are your 3 top suggestions? Please be 3 bullet points only.
The first one is transparency. Transparency in the policy, transparency.
Understood, sir. Transparency.
Okay, transparency. Yeah. The second is building trust. Between all the stakeholders.
Okay.
And third is a clear participation between all the stakeholders so that we can make this vision come into reality.
Yeah. Ranga, your take, Ranga?
I will go with transparency too as the first one. The second one is that the way we set our views. If you see today, we have many departments that don't work with each other. So rather than look at these silos which are departments, look at a process of delivering and set all our focuses on the processes so we handle each other to finish to get going. And the third one is, of course, make things a little easier to do.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Ji, what is your take, sir?
Collaborative approach.
Okay.
Transparency.
Okay.
And then a smart use of technology.
Smart technologies.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Manoj. The last question made the point easier for you. Yeah.
So all of them.
Yeah.
But I would say the citizens' business case, enterprise business case,
okay,
and government business case.
Fantastic. Good. But the matter still doesn't end there. One more question to each one of you. But then this time we go to a super over. Super over means you will be facing only one question and you have to have only one line answer or very shorter than that. Now we have made the announcement of smart cities and so many cities are competing for the smart city status and asking for money. What should be the first job to be done by the government or by the industry? What is the only job to be done or the first job to be done to trigger the process in the right direction? Ranga, you would like to have a start?
Define what a smart city is.
Okay. Mr. Ji?
Long-term planning.
Long-term planning. Manoj Ji?
I would say start tomorrow.
Start tomorrow what? With what?
With whatever you have in hand.
No, then I will go to Himalayas, then do nothing, some kind of thing happen. But something must be specific.
You exercise your jurisdiction on that.
Okay. Banerjee?
I think transparency. Just bring in transparency in the policy and
Okay.
clear communication, because I think there's still a lot of confusion, or not confusion, lack of clarity about what smart city is, how will it roll out, what is private role and party. I mean, I think the right people need to come out and talk and have an, rather than people, contemplating and evaluating what it is.
Thank you. Friends, there was a very interesting internet anecdote traveling around through the WhatsApp. It goes up something like this. There was a big seminar on English literature, and many of them could not come to an agreement between what is the difference between complete and finish. Okay. And so there are several sessions like how we had today. Finally, one person came up and said, if you are married to a right partner, your life is complete. Okay. If it's not, if you are married to a wrong person, your life is finished. But if a right partner sees you with a wrong partner, your life is completely finished. Okay, friends, you can decide whether the program is, this session is complete or finished or completely finished, whatever you like. Thank you very much. Thanks for your patience.